Welcome back, fiber friends. My name is Brian. This is the Wool to Gold channel, and today we're going to be making more art yarn to no one's surprise. Today we're going to be focusing on supercoils, which is a really fun category of hand-spun art yarn or textured yarn, if that's your preference term. I personally came to love supercoils because despite all of my spinning skills, I, just like everybody else, has their weaknesses, and core spun yarns have always been something that I've really struggled with. Traditional core spun yarns, that is. However, supercoils are something that I've always been able to get my just head around. One cool thing about supercoils is this is a yarn that definitely lends itself to incorporating a lot of commercially spun yarn, maybe entirely commercially spun yarn. If that sounds like your kind of thing, you don't want to spin the singles and you have some yarn that you just know you're never gonna use and you want to turn it into something new, this is a really great option for it. So let's talk a little bit more about these elements separately, and then I'm going to show you how to actually bring them together to make the supercoil yarn. As always, I'm going to have my notes with me, so that's what I'm looking at if you see me looking down. And I also wanted to include the fact that all of these art yarn videos that I've been making, this entire series, is entirely based on the Spinner's Book of Yarn Design by Sarah Anderson. Sarah Anderson, if you're watching this, thank you so much for writing this. I think you're just a literal genius, a literal yarn genius. Thank you so much for this resource. I don't make any commission from you going out and purchasing this yourself. I just think it's actually one of the most spectacular textured and art yarn resources on the market, and I highly recommend. And if you're ever wondering what a lot of my references are for these, almost all of them, it starts with this book. So supercoils are core yarns, so obviously there is a core element to them. In this case, I'm going to be using this cotton thread that I got from the craft thrift store. I love this. It's a great color. It's an entire cone, so I just feel like it's endless. However, I've been using a lot of it. This looked a lot larger when I first got it, so I'm proud of myself for actually using it. You can use a number of different things for the core. However, in a lot of cases, it is recommended that you use something thinner, like thread, for a lot of different reasons. If you're using something really thick, there is a risk that when you're doing the actual, coiling that is needed, it takes some of the twist out of the center core. And so if it's really thick, you know, if you spin yarn already, that thicker singles don't have a lot of twist in them traditionally, and so it might start to fall apart on you. It's just a lot trickier. Highly recommend getting some thread. Doesn't even have to be actual thread from Joann's, just something super duper lightweight that's gonna hold together for you. For different types of core spun yarns, it's sometimes recommended that you use a stretchy or non-stretchy core material. For a supercoil, one of the fun things is that you can use either, and you can experiment with both of them, and I highly recommend you do. It produces different types of yarn. I'll be totally honest with you. Traditionally, and in a lot of cases personally, I have seen supercoils used by predominantly weavers. However, you guys know me, I want to see more knitters and crocheters using these textured art yarns in general because, I don't know, I like the results that I get. I think especially with the supercoil too, the thing about supercoils, today we're going to be doing a continuous supercoil, which means we're going to be wrapping a single around the outside of our core and then squishing that together. You're going to see what I mean by squishing that together later on. But if you are somebody who is a crocheter or a knitter and you want a little bit more of a, I don't know, something that's easier to incorporate into knitting or crochet, in my opinion, I really do recommend the intermittent supercoil, which it's exactly like it sounds. So some of it is just going to be thread plied yarn, and then occasionally you're just gonna make a little supercoil. I think it was JC Boggs who was super notorious for doing very slubby singles and then doing intermittent supercoils where when it got thicker she would supercoil it and squish it together, and then when it would thin out again she would do just a traditional thread ply. If I'm not mistaken, I could be getting my yarn history wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that was something that she was very well known for. It's not like she has gone anywhere. She's still here and producing content that is available online. Thank you, JC Boggs. Also another great yarn resource if you're looking for more yarn resources in general. Last thing that I wanted to talk about before we moved on and talked about the singles and kind of bringing them together is that, just to remind you, that core spun yarns is a big category. So if supercoils aren't aren't really your thing, Correspond Yarns does include things like Boolean loops, and again, slub coils, which I mentioned before. You can also add beads if this feels a little bit boring or mundane to you, or you want to add something with a little bit more interest. Just a reminder though, before you go and buy a bunch of beads, to check the orifice size of your wheel to make sure that the beads will actually fit through. The same kind of goes in general for your singles. Don't make them too thick. This yarn is going to end up being a lot thicker than you will expect, and your singles are going to disappear very quickly as well. So you're going to need less core than you expect, and you're going to need more singles than you expect in order to get the yardage that you want, right? Because we're wrapping this around this, so we need a lot of these to cover very little ground on this. Something about the singles again is like, these are like pretty thick for a Supercoil. Obviously, they're not the thickest singles by themselves, but the way that these singles will, again, sort of fluff up around the Supercoil, you have to be just aware that the yarn is going to come out thicker, and just be aware of your orifice size. It's a real bummer when you spin something for an entire project, and then you realize it's not gonna turn out the way that you want it to, or it won't turn out at all because you don't have a wheel that is literally capable of like taking those singles. So just keep that in mind. These are the singles that I spun for our Supercoil yarn. I'm pretty sure these are Z-twist singles, if I'm not mistaken. I'll put it on the screen, whatever it is. But regardless, your singles can be Z-twist, they can be S-twist, and you can use commercial yarn for making a Supercoil. Maybe we'll try to do that. Maybe we'll make that a little bonus edition at the end if you want to see an example of that. If you're new to spinning, and again, spinning singles can sometimes be, it can be a lot. Spinning a whole 4 ounces can feel a little intimidating, especially when you know that all of these singles are going to get eaten up really quickly. Our yardage is going to shrink an exceptional amount by the end of this, and I'll show you that at the end as well. But yeah, let's get spinning. Although you can see my wheel Benny in the background, that's my Lendrum. Today we are going to be using my Shacked Matchless Marion. I have been wanting to remember to tell you guys which wheel I'm using more, because I always get a question in the comments like, what wheel do you use for spinning? I really love both of my wheels. Obviously, I recommend them. However, with the caveat that wheels are very individual to individual people. Like, different wheels have very much different personalities and different things that they're good at and not so good at, and that's something that people should try to research, and if at all possible, try the wheel before you actually buy it, especially if you're particularly tall or particularly small. I myself am 5'6", which is incredibly average. God bless, made it easy to buy a wheel. But it is something that you need to keep in mind. It's also like if you have chronic pain. If you want to know more about buying wheels, I'm going to link my video below. It's a video where I talk all about my recommendations for buying wheels, whether you're buying them new, used, if you want to go the antique route, my reasons that I didn't go the antique route personally. Again, I'll put that below if you want more information. It's a little bit of an older video of mine, but I do think that it really holds up, and I cover a lot of bases. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you before I set up my wheel is I think I'm going to try to spin it at a 7.5-to-1 ratio. So this inner lip right here. This is my whirl. Adjusting the ratio will make essentially your wheel add more or less twist per treadle, right? So I'm trying to slow it down just for the simple fact that I want to be able to show you guys like in the best way possible the plying and how to accomplish that, and also the squishing. I can spin Supercoils really fast now because I have done a lot of these yarns, because I do like the way that they look. I just think that they're really beautiful, and I don't know, there's just something about them. There's just something about them. You'll see the yarn. You'll agree with me, I promise. But yeah, let me set this up and we'll get to the actual plying. Alright, so I did check my handy dandy spinner's reference card, and these are actually S-twist singles, so we're going to be applying accordingly with that. This shenanigans right here is exactly why I really need to apply up these singles, because as you can see, all of my Lendrum bobbins right now are full, and I kind of want to finish plying this on the Lendrum for an assortment of reasons, because I already started plying it. As you can see, it's a 2-ply. I need to add this 3rd ply. It's going to be a bubble crepe yarn. Very excited. Kind of stopped in my tracks because I ran out of bobbin, so that's why we need to use this. Put your bobbin on a Lazy Kate. If you don't have a proper Lazy Kate, you can make one with a box and some knitting needles. I used that for a very long time before I got a proper Lazy Kate. It's really fine. Personally, okay, so I'm right-handed, right? So I like to control the plying singles with my right hand and have the core on my left side. If you are a lefty, you might want to do it the opposite way. But personally, I'm going to be putting this Lazy Kate on my right side. I'm going to be putting my cone of yarn on the left side. And then we're going to get ready to ply. Once you have both your core and your singles attached to the lead, you can start plying. This is really a yarn that's all about plying angle and adjustment as you're actually spinning. So you want to hold your core at like a straight 180-degree angle, like flat, totally level with your orifice and all of that. And then you're going to have your wrapping singles held at about approximately a 90-degree angle in order to have them start to wrap around this core. So I'm gonna slowly start spinning. And as you can see, they're kind of naturally wrapping around it. And this is kind of what a normal like spiral ply or thread ply would look like. But instead of just leaving it the way it is, we're going to start pushing all of those loops together. And we're going to continue this process. And as you get more used to the sensation, you'll get faster. And sometimes, if a little bit too much twist starts to build up, or you see that, you know, there's a part of it that didn't loop the way you wanted to, you can stop, you can adjust things, you can pull things back, and you can let more of these singles wrap around to take some of that extra twist out. There's not a lot of twist in here though, so I kind of need to keep adding twist in order to get some... There we go. And then it just feeds through the orifice like usual. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and as you probably already noticed, this is definitely a thicker yarn. Let's make another nice section. Alright, so as you can see, right, this is a lot thicker than just these singles. Let's try to get a side-by-side. See? You see how much thicker this is than these singles, so just be prepared for that as well. Now let's say you do want to do an intermittent supercoil or an intermittent coil. You're going to ply it like any other thread ply, and then every once in a while you're going to squish some together, and then you're going to continue along your merry way, and then you're going to squish some together, and you're going to continue that down the line to get these little hives. Now if you want to secure them a little bit more, you can sort of almost like backtrack back over it. I don't know if you guys saw that little motion I did. And then let's try to get a little close-up on this. 1 second. This is what I mean by kind of backtracking to secure it. And let me see if I can actually film from this angle to show you guys exactly how I do this. This was the only way I could get this shot, so you guys are just going to have to deal with the vertical screen and also my voiceover, but I do hope that this visual helps illustrate what I was doing. I actually liked the angle enough that I did try to film a similar shot of me doing the Supercoil, so you guys could better see that as well. and hopefully this helps. And then, just as I promised, this is some commercial yarn that I have. This is some like commercially spun cotton from Joann's that I bought a bunch of for some reason, even though I don't love this colorway. So we're going to turn it into a Supercoil yarn, and it literally works the same way. You're just going to treat the ball, and obviously you can do a single strand. I'm doubling up just to make it go by a little bit faster, because super coiling takes forever. And you're gonna do the exact same thing as you would with any other super coil yarn. So as you start to wrap it around, you're gonna scrunch it. And obviously you can add as many or as few plies as you want. Alright, and here we have our finished, hanked up super coil yarn. As you can see, I already took it off the bobbin. Because this is a 2-ply yarn, it's only getting plied once, right? And then once you have it looking like this, you can take it right off of the bobbin. It's essentially done. I do still need to wash this and thwack this. I do think that super coils, due to like the nature of the yarn, right? We want these coils to kind of be as close together and as thick and puffy as possible. I personally think that making sure to wash and thwack this yarn is essential, especially if you plan on weaving it, knitting it, crocheting it without swatching. Please, please, please wash the yarn first, right? Because if you're not going to swatch, right, there's already going to be some changing of the yarn when you eventually wash that swatch that you didn't do, aka just your finished object. It might expand a little bit, right? Because that's often what happens, or it'll stretch in one direction that we didn't expect. This will only be emphasized if you're not washing and if you're not thwacking your yarn. Thwacking, just like twanging, is something that you don't necessarily need to do. There are certain cases, especially for very worsted style, shiny, tight yarn, you might not want to thwack it, even if it'll make your yarn more even. You risk it getting sort of a halo or some fluffiness to it, and so a lot of people will just choose to opt out in that case. But in a case like this with the super coil, again, I think that washing and thwacking is kind of a necessity just to make this whole thing fill out and look its best. That being said, I love the way this came out. Like, I think it looks like a giant fuzzy caterpillar. I think it's delightful. The color is superb, and it's really squishy and soft. I have to say, sometimes with super coils, depending on the material you use, they can be a little bit stiff or tight. I think that's why traditionally they've been kind of reserved for weaving and basket projects and things like that. However, if you spin it right, if you give it the right core, especially a stretchy one, it can be really, really soft and pliable as well. And I think that just about covers all of our bases, fiber friends. Thank you so much for watching yet another art yarn tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if there's an art yarn that you don't know how to make, you want to know how to make it, you think I can help you, drop in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.